Hello everyone and welcome to the Gunpla Network. I'm the Spicer and today's review of the Kotobukiya Humikane Shimada Wonder Woman is brought to you by the Gunpla Hermit Shop. The Gunpla Hermit Shop has a wide variety of kits going outside of just Gundam and Gunpla to look at some more Plamo options like this Kotobukiya Wonder Woman or some of the Supernova Zoids that we've reviewed in the past. When you're checking out their catalog and placing your order, don't forget to use the promo code NETWORK10 to save 10% off. If you're unfamiliar, Wonder Woman is a staple in the world of comics, being first introduced all the way back in 1941 in All-Star Comics number 8. Princess Diana of Themyscira has close ties to the pantheon of Greek gods and in some stories is actually a demigod herself. While on the other hand, Humikane Shimada is a Japanese mechanical designer best known for her works on series like Strike Witches. Well, there are kind of some similarities. This largely feels super different than Shimada's previous works, especially things like Strike Witches. We do have a small variety of plates and really no color correcting stickers to speak of, so it'll be interesting to see how accurate this plastic actually comes out, because you only have a small handful of actual plates. There's no A plate with multiple colors on it. They're all pretty much molded into the one color, so fingers crossed everything comes out well. Now, I do have to say up front, this is one of very few Kotobukiya kits I've ever built, so this is kind of a refresher. It's not the first one, but it's the first one in a long time, so I'll see kind of the differences, of course, again, between Kotobukiya and Bandai, and just looking at what comes in the box, it feels like a little bit fewer in terms of runners, but they have a lot of parts in individualized bags, which is kind of interesting. Not 100% sure as to why. I kind of do like it. It helps keep things organized, but at the same time, it would have been nice to maybe just have another plate, and if there's any kind of color correction issues, have that fixed there, or just another plate I think would have been a little easier, but to each their own, no big deal. Now, all put together, this Wonder Waifu actually ends up looking really good. Generally speaking, the colors match the box art pretty well. There's a few minor issues here and there, but nothing really eye-catching or immersion-breaking, I guess would be a word you could use here. Those minor differences between the box art and what we see in plastic are honestly not a big deal, but this is a kit that I'll talk about a little bit more in a second that really deserves paint. And if you've never painted before, that shouldn't scare you for something like this, but just little bits of paint here and there will really make this pop. For instance, the hair is molded in the same kind of blue, purple, really dark blue purpley color that the sleeves for the arms and the legs are, and that just comes looking a little weird. It's not bad, and in some lights, it's kind of hard to tell that they're the same color, but generally speaking, the box does have it listed, or at least painted as a different color. So, regardless whether you want to go like a dark brown or a black, that would really set it off, that just at least make the head pop a little bit more and not blend in less with the body. There is a little teal jewel in the chest that isn't accurate, but once again, really minor things. There's some color work there that's also gold in the box art. Once again, nothing too crazy. And actually talking about the molded gold pieces, they aren't bad. They're not super cheesy looking. They have a little bit of marbling here and there, but generally speaking, almost all of these parts are small enough that you don't have a large enough contiguous surface for it to show really badly. Now, if you get up on it and look, you do see some marbling here and there. You see it worse so on the shield, but it's not all that bad, honestly. And visually speaking, right out of box, this kit looks really good. I was kind of worried when I first opened the box and saw those eye stickers, because I'm really terrible with sticker placement, and eyes are something that if you don't get just right a lot of times, they look super wonky. So I was relieved to see that there were some that already had some pre-molded or pre-painted faces. That's really nice. I don't really know what you're supposed to do with those other stickers. I guess you could put them on there, because there's not a blank face. I don't really know what you get them for, but it's cool that they come with them. I'm sure there are people who will use them, but I'm just fine with the pre-molded stuff and pre-painted stuff. And the accessories generally outside of those work really well. The sword is fairly big, but I think that works for the kind of more anime or manga-esque appearance that this Wonder Woman takes on. There are some sharp, kind of pointy parts here and there on the forearms and on the calves, but they're not too pointy. They blend in with the aesthetic. They don't really, at least the ones on the legs, don't really seem to serve a purpose, but they kind of look cool. And the legs are really the only place outside of the hip armor where we are seeing a big departure from color accuracy, and it is very minor. The boots are supposed to have white striping. Once again, not really all that hard to paint. And if you wanted to do a different color, or even if you wanted to do a gray, a brown, or a black just to set it off, you could also do the straps that go around the back of the calves as well. And then the hips, the little stars are supposed to be white. But once again, any distinct color that you choose kind of as an accent would work there as well. All that being said, Poseability is really good as well. The only kind of minor issues I've had are on the arms. The bicep has this little piece of armor that moves freely around. It's just slid onto the peg there. But it does like to bump into the hair, and I wish the back of the hair would have some articulation or something like that, because even just the normal shoulder bumps into it as well, unfortunately. But generally speaking, a little bit of patience, a little bit of work, and you can get around it. Not all that bad. Now, before we go any further, I will say, the reason I've talked so much about paint is because I felt the need to paint this just to show you an example of a few minor colors and in just a little bit of time. It didn't take me more than maybe an hour to paint this, just dry painting, no airbrushing, and it looks like this. This is a lot closer to what we see on the box, and I think generally brings out some of the cooler features. Now, of course, the boots are the biggest departure other than painting the hair, which I think is probably one of the more subtle aspects, but one of the most important. So, kind of starting from the head down, the hair. I just went with the basic black. It's close to what we see on the box art. Once again, depending on the lighting and everything, it could be different on how the box art was drawn, but generally speaking, it looks to be darker than the sleeves and stuff. I liked that. I think that looks really well. I think it turned out good. I did put some gold paint on all of the gold armor. I think that, well, the gold wasn't cheesy looking. It does look pretty significantly different in the painted images and even on the artist rendition on the box art. And it does help feel it more like armor, even if you just go over it with a light gold paint. And that's kind of what I did here. Is the paint I have, it's not a very thick paint. It doesn't coat, or I say it's actually pretty thick paint, but it's a very light coat. So the base color comes through quite a bit. And that's kind of something you have to think about, right? Is what color do I want this to look like? And you could go bronzy here, and I think it would look really good, but I decided to keep it gold. It's a little less plasticky looking, and I think that really adds to the armor effect. I did all of the gold on the kit. I don't think there's a piece I missed. There might be, but I don't think there is. Outside of that, I did the red with a matte, kind of darker red to help give the dark blue a little bit more of a complement, but also help it contrast the gold a little bit more where it matches up. And then I added some white, and that was it. I did forget to move the white all the way down the foot of the boot, but generally speaking, you get the idea. And I think this looks really good. This is one of those kits that a little bit of paint goes a really long way. It didn't take me a long time to paint, and this gives you something more striking. It doesn't look as plastic, because they did a really good job of making the skin tone not come off as fake or plasticky looking. And that's really the biggest concern. The dark blue purple color, sure, a little bit, but when you have everything else in a less plasticky looking coat, whether it's matte, semi-gloss, or full gloss, it is going to come off significantly better. And there are a lot of Gundams that are just general Gunpla that don't really require paint and look fine. And this looks fine out of box, but this is one of those that I cannot stress enough just goes the extra mile when you put a little bit of extra effort in. And this, regardless of you put it up against Gunpla or any existing DC or Marvel stuff you've got, will look great. It'll stand out and just have its own presence on that part of your shelf because it's so different than anything else we've seen. You're not going to find any or at least a lot of Wonder Woman action figures, whether it's imports from Japan or figures you'll find domestically here in the States, that look like this. This is just going to be different from any of that. Kind of the same thing with just general DC figures in general. And then if you go the other route and go Gunpla, or even like a bunch of like Zoids or something else, unless you've got some of the other Armored Up Girl series, she's going to stand out. And even amongst those, she is such a different design, where the armor is less mechanical and just kind of plays into that whole Greek god heritage while still trying to be marginally relevant, or look more modernized, I suppose, and just comes off looking really good. And I know I'm saying that a lot, guys, but I really cannot stress enough, if you get this, at least kind of contemplate just a little bit putting some paint on it, at least like the hair and maybe a little bit on the gold and just a little bit of white, and that's pretty much all. Those really put such a stark contrast on all the pieces they're on that it makes visually a big enough difference, I would say, is good. Now, enough rambling about the paint. Like I said, Poseability is really good. I did paint the sword. Sword works well. If you put it with any action effects for posing, for photography, it's going to look good. And even if you just put it in static poses, just, once again, a really striking design. The sword and the shield are okay. The sword, like I said, is bigger, but it kind of matches the proportions we're going with. The shield's a little undersized, but you do get the gold effect piece that goes around it, which kind of makes it look a little cooler. I will note also you have to paint the W on that shield. You don't have to. I did. I think it helps stand out a little bit, but just during my general preference, I suppose. I get the Lasso of Truth, which looks good. I kind of wish they would have coated this in a slightly different color, but it's okay. You get two versions of it, a shorter version to put in the little hip holster thingy, and then you have the long version that you can use for any lasso-y type poses. Now, they are just cables. There's not a lasso on one end, so you'll have to kind of wrap the wire around, but they are bendable, so they're really easy to maneuver. I would say the long one is really long, so it's kind of hard to get some of the poses in. And you have a big variety of hands with this, so regardless whether you're going in action pose, you can use either the gripping hands, or there's one with the pointer finger extended that works for either one, the shield or the sword or the lasso. The shield, usually like a fist or maybe a kind of reaching hand, looks fine. Then you have like a relaxed hand, and then fists, which I think, once again, kind of going to the proportions, are just really small, which is not all that crazy. There are a lot of issues with like fists on even Bandai kits being absurdly small. Like early rail grades were really bad about this, and maybe some more modern rail grades, but generally speaking, most people are not going to use fists on Gundams. This, I would have liked to have seen at least some more proportionally accurate fists, just because it is a human character that fights with her fists at some points, so it is something people may want to pose with it. So it's been nice to have seen that, but not a big deal, honestly. You have so many different posing options with the accessories you have. It's not all that big of a deal, honestly speaking. Overall, though, going from Bandai to Kotobukiya is not all that different. The general concepts work the same. They're all snap fits, so you don't need any glue or anything. I would say there's some weird parts fitting here, but it's not all that crazy, honestly. It's not complex, it's just there's some strange choices that were made, mostly in the torso. The armor that goes around the chest doesn't fit flush, so you do have a couple of points where it kind of breaks, and it doesn't look bad, but it is just kind of weird they went that way. Could also be how I put it together, but generally speaking, that might be something to consider. Outside of that, though, I am super pleased with this. I think it looks really good. It comes with its own stand, which is really nice. The stand's kind of unique in and of itself. The posing options look good. It looks a lot better than some of its contemporaries in terms of Wonder Woman action figures or model kits, I guess. And it's just such a unique design, honestly. Like, even if it didn't have a lot of the posability or the accessories it had, it's just such a cool take on Wonder Woman that even if you're vaguely a DC fan, I think really warrants looking at it and considering it. It's a fun build, it's really straightforward and easy, you have a lot of posing options. It's a good kind of first take if you want to do some basic paint, especially like the hair, because it's just really straightforward, it all pops off, so you can paint it really easily without worrying about anything. It's a good kit for anyone who wants to either leave it alone, just build it, put it on the shelf, or someone who wants to take a little time and just see what they can do with it, honestly. If you didn't paint the gold looks fine. If you didn't want to put the white accents, you don't have to. But those little bits just help distinguish it more and just provide such a different visual style and help accent those parts that need to be accented. But overall, very pleased. Kotobukiya kits are not all that crazy. I actually like this better than the couple of frames I've built in the past, so it is, I think, probably a good direction. Now, of course, like I said, I don't build a lot of Kotobukiya kits, so I don't know how they've been doing, but this is a good indicator, honestly. I would put this up there with a lot of Bandai kits, and yeah, it's really similar to a high grade or maybe a Figuart standard if you wanted to kind of go that route. But accessories are great, posability is great, visually speaking, really nice. Overall, you're a Wonder Woman fan? Yes. If you're a DC fan? Yes. If you're just someone who wants something different, if you just don't want to build another robot or you can't get motivated to build something from your backlog, it's a yes. But those are my thoughts. In those comments down below, what do you think? Is the paint necessary? Does the paint help? Have you ever painted a kit? Let us know in the comments down below, and what do you think of this Wonder Woman kit in its completion with my somewhat rushed paint job? I've been the Spicer for the Gunpla Network. As always, friends, stay safe and keep on building.